In this video, we're going to take a look at multiplying integers and decimals using a matrix method. And over here, I'm just going to show you the numbers that we're going to multiply. We're going to multiply 6, 4, 2, 8, and 3, 2, 2, 4. Now, traditionally, we'd start over on this 4 at the this. By the way, this bottom one is called the multiplier, and the top one is called the multiplicand. Yeah, they really do have different names. Anyway, you'd start with the ones digit on the multiplier, and you would multiply that into each digit of the multiplicand. Anytime you ran into a product of these two numbers that was greater than 10, you would have to carry the tens column. And so it's 4 times 8 is 32. Well, the 2 of the 32 would come down into the answers, and the 3 would get carried to the next column because you're really talking about 3 tens and 2 ones. And then if you recall this method from any earlier classes, that sort of thing, or you're just seeing it for the first time, that's fine. After you would get through the first row, you would put a leading 0 down in the next row. And that would start multiplying this tens column. When you multiply 20 and 8, you get 160. You'll notice you don't get any ones. That's why we put a 0 here. So what I'm going to do with this next method is I'm just going to kind of make it a little bit neater for those of us that have that struggle when we have a bunch of numbers up there and it starts to become gibberish. Because what happens is once you carry and you start to carry quite a bit, you say, oh, 2 times 8, and that's, oh, it's 16, and oh, was I supposed to carry that 3? Does that, it's getting confusing. So somebody developed this other method, which I think actually comes from the Babylonians, which makes it about old, somewhere around 4,000 years old. So it's not very new. We put the multiplicand on the top, 6, 4, 2, 8. Spread your numbers out and give yourself a lot of room because this is going to take some paper. And then once you have those down, make sure you separate between the numbers into columns. Drop those columns down, make them as straight as possible. I'll try to give you an annotation in the video later as far as where to find some graph paper that will help you in this endeavor. I'm going to change the yellow for the multiplicand. 3, 2, 2, 4. And again, we're going to separate these, but this time we're going to separate into rows. And so now that we have them in rows and columns, we have cells. Later on, you'll call these cells you'll call this whole thing a matrix, and these cells will be entries. Here's where the little trick comes in. Once you have your grid laid out, and this works for all numbers, all size numbers, by the way. Once you have your grid laid out, you want to go ahead and put diagonals in. And you want to be very cautious on your diagonals. I'll probably make some other videos involving 3-digit and then 4-digit numbers so that you can see what happens when you don't have the same number of squares on both sides. And make it very nice and neat. Very nice and neat. The neater the better. It will only help you. Now, here's the deal. We're going to read this like a map. So if you were finding like column 3 and row A, and you wanted to find out which streets were on an old map, that's an old map, it's not Google Maps. What you would do is you would find the column, and then you'd find the row, and then you'd find out where they intersect. And where they intersect is the place where you need to be looking. For us, that place where they intersect is going to be the cell where the answer is. And in this cell, we're going to have tens on the top, and we're going to have ones on the bottom. And we're going to multiply everything. So we've got 6 times 3 is 18. The 1 goes from the 18, the tens, goes up top, the 8 goes below. Now we move to the 4 and the 3. And we say 4 times 3 is going to put us here in this cell. 4 times 3 is 12. The 1 or the tens part of the 12 goes up top. The 2 1s go on the bottom. You continue this method until all of these cells are filled. If you run into one, for example, this very next one, 2 times 3 is 6. Well, I have 6 1s, but I don't have any 10s. Put a 0 there. It's going to just help you. And now if you want to give it a chance to pause the video and go or go back and review how I set this up and how now's a great time to do it. Okay, so now I have 8 times 3 is 24. You'll notice where I'm not doing any adding, I'm not doing any carrying yet. That's going to be done later. Now that I move on to the next row, my next row of cells, I'm going to change to a dark blue just so I differentiate what I'm doing. And so I'm taking all of these columns and I'm going to multiply it into this row. So I've got 6 and 2. They match up or intersect at this column. I'm sorry, this cell. So 6 times 2 is 12. The 1 10 goes up top and the 2 1s go on the bottom. And you continue to do this. 4 times 2 is 8, so it's 0, 8. Then you have 2 times 2 is 4, 0, 4. The other 4, goofy. Sometimes my 4s look a lot like 8s for some reason. 8 times 2 is 16. Again, you'll repeat the process. I'm going to change to green. You're going to take each one of these columns and that row. So the third row, all 4 columns. 2 times 6 is 12. You'll notice that because you're multiplying by the same number here, it's going to be the exact same as the row before it. And so it's going to be 0, 8, 0, 4, 1, 6. For that last column, I'm going to go ahead and use yellow. Or sorry, the last row of cells, I'm going to use yellow. And I'm going to use each one of these columns again. And 6 comes down here. And so this first cell is going to be 6 times 4, which is 24. Then 4 times 4 is 16. Then 2 times 4 is 0, 8. Then 8 times 4 is 32. Whew. Wow, man, that took a while, didn't it? Okay, as you get better, you'll start whipping through this. It'll be a lot faster. But for these first few times, you must give it some time. Now that we have all of our cells filled in, we're going to add along the diagonals. That's why I changed the colors, and that's why it's important to keep the diagonals very straight and very neat. We're going to start down in the lower right-hand corner with the 2. Okay, so we just put down that 2. Then we're going to move in the same method. We're going to add up all of these numbers in the next diagonal. 6 and 3 is 9, and 8 is 17. Your carry goes into the next diagonal. If you want, you can put it anywhere in this diagonal as long as you put it there. So if you like to put it with the 6 maybe because it's closer to the 6 than, or the 0 maybe because it's closer that way, that's perfectly fine. 6 and 4 is 10, and 1 is 11, and 1 is 12, and 6 is 18. 18. And now we add along this diagonal. 4 and 1 is 5, and 1 is 6, and 4 is 10, and 8 and 0 is 10, and 8 is 18, and 1 is 19, and 4 is 23. You keep the 3. The 4 goes into the next diagonal. Oh, it's 23. 23. I apologize greatly for that. I know learning something new and having somebody mess it up is not a good thing. Probably remake this video later. It is 23. So the 2 from the 20 comes up into that next diagonal and gets added into everything. So we have 2, 4, 10, and 8 is 18, and 2 is 20, and 2 is 22. The 2 from the 1's column comes out. The 2 from the 10's column, the 20 part, gets carried to the next diagonal. And then we add along that diagonal is 2, and 2 is 4, and 2 is 6, and 1 is 7. And there's no carry. So we let it alone. We go to the next diagonal. And we go 1 and 8 is 9 and 1 is 10. We put a 0 here and a 1 here. And we hit this diagonal for 1 and 1 is 2. Okay? Now, start here in this upper left corner and come down and go over to write your number. It's 20723872. Then go starting on the right hand side, you count for every 3, put a comma. That separates the ones, the thousands, and the millions. Here's your answer. 6428. So 6,428 times 3,224 equals 20,723,872. Notice there's no ands in there. We don't have any partials. You can use this for decimals, but you have to remember your decimal rule also of if you multiply two numbers, you add up the number of decimal places. That's how many decimal places your answer has. Keep that in mind if you use this for decimals.